I'm not usually the kind of guy who lets things get to me. I was raised to stay calm, keep my head down, and let actions speak louder than words. That probably explains why I ended up being the quiet cousin in a loud family. Observant, reliable, financially stable at 29, and just invisible enough to be underestimated. My name's Landon, and if you asked anyone at a family event who I was, half of them would call me the quiet one, and the other half would probably call me the rich one, followed by some awkward laugh as if it were a compliment. I never liked that label. Not because it was inaccurate. I do pretty well for myself as a software consultant with a decent portfolio of real estate and investments, but because it always came with this sneaky undertone. Like I wasn't really family, just the ATM they all kept forgetting to thank. It wasn't always this way. When we were kids, family felt like family. Backyard barbecues, birthday cakes, and water balloon fights. But somewhere between college and adulthood, that warmth got replaced with whispers, with sideways glances, and half-hearted conversations. My Uncle John started making jokes like, "Landon's probably too busy swimming in his money to show up." Aunt Denise would greet me with hugs that lasted half a second and questions like, "So, got any stock tips for your old Annie?" My own parents, who meant well, told me to just let it go. They're just jealous. But after the fifth or sixth time someone asked if I could help out with a car payment or loan, a little something to get them through the month, I stopped laughing it off. I started showing up less. And when I did, I stayed in the corner, smiled, nodded, and kept a mental tally of every backhanded compliment and passive-aggressive comment thrown my way. Still, I showed up to my younger brother Mason's graduation banquet. Mason's always been different. He's loud, charming, a bit reckless, but deep down, he has a good heart. We don't talk every day, but I've got a soft spot for him. He struggled through college, juggling classes and part-time jobs, always a step away from dropping out. He didn't ask for help, and I respected that. So when he actually made it, I was proud, genuinely. I wanted to be there for him, even if it meant spending an evening dodging conversations with people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. The banquet was being held at this upscale event hall downtown. My dad had pulled some strings to rent it out, probably with a discount from one of his connections. It looked like something out of a wedding catalog. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with navy blue cloths, gold-rimmed glassware, and a massive projector screen at the front of the room for the family slideshow. My parents were buzzing around like bees, greeting guests, posing for pictures, and double-checking the seating chart like generals preparing for battle. I was seated at a table off to the side, close enough to be visible, but far enough to not interrupt the chaos. Next to me sat my girlfriend Emily. We'd been dating for about a year and a half. Smart, driven, great sense of humor. She didn't come from money, which I actually liked. Made things feel real. I hadn't told her much about my family, only the basics. She knew they were complicated, but I didn't want to color her view before she saw it for herself. And tonight, I figured, would just be one of those smile and nod nights. I underestimated how bold people could be when they thought you weren't listening. Somewhere between the second course and Mason's best friend giving a tipsy speech about grinding through finals, I stepped out to take a call from a client. Just a quick 5-minute thing, but when I came back and took my seat, Emily was gone. I scanned the room and spotted her across the hall, standing near the dessert table, locked in conversation with my cousin Brittany. Now, Brittany and I have a history, not the romantic kind. The kind where you grow up close, but as adults, you become reminders of each other's shortcomings. She and I used to hang out all the time as kids, but after high school, she took a different path. Dropped out of community college, bounced between minimum wage jobs, and was now a self-proclaimed aspiring influencer who lived off her boyfriend's crypto gains and posted Instagram stories about manifesting wealth. Brittany had a habit of being sweet to your face and venomous behind your back. But she always acted like she was entitled to my time, my attention, and my wallet. I stayed seated, watched the two of them talking from across the room. Brittany was smiling a little too wide, gesturing animatedly with a champagne glass in her hand. Emily's face, meanwhile, shifted from polite curiosity to discomfort. Her brows furrowed slightly, her lips thinned. And then, this part is etched in my memory. I saw Brittany lean in, tilt her head, and say something directly into Emily's ear. Whatever it was, Emily froze. Just for a second. Then she stepped back, murmured something, and walked off. I thought about getting up. asking what Brittany had said, asking if Emily was okay. But instead, I picked up my glass of wine, held it up, and gave Brittany a slow, deliberate nod and smile. She didn't notice right away, but a few seconds later, she glanced my way, caught the smile, and froze mid-laugh. Her mouth curled into a smirk as if she were proud of whatever she'd just said. I didn't flinch, just took a sip, set the glass down, and waited. Emily returned a minute later, quiet. I leaned in and asked, "Everything all right?" She nodded. "Yeah, just needed some air." I let it go, for now. But the wheels had already started turning in my head. I'd seen that look before, the one she gave when she was trying to keep it together, the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her dress when she was holding back. Whatever Brittany said, it hit a nerve, and I knew better than to push Emily when she wasn't ready to talk. The rest of the night moved in slow motion. Speeches, clapping, the clink of silverware. The slideshow was scheduled for the end. I already knew what was coming, because 3 weeks earlier, I'd made a quiet decision that no one in that room saw coming, not even Mason. But before any of that could unfold, I had to sit there, smiling, shaking hands, pretending I didn't just witness my cousin poisoning my girlfriend's view of me with one whisper. I don't know if it was the champagne or the confidence that comes with entitlement, but Brittany kept sneaking glances at me like she'd won something. Like whatever she said had planted a seed she thought would grow into doubt, or maybe even a breakup. And the worst part? Emily avoided eye contact with me for nearly the entire last hour. She smiled when I touched her hand, laughed at my jokes, but I could feel the space between us widening, subtle but unmistakable. And that's when I realized it wasn't just Brittany. It was all of them. The whole room. People who thought my success made me a target, who laughed behind my back and smiled when I paid the check, who called me the family wallet like it was a harmless joke, but never once asked how I got there, how many nights I stayed up working, how much I gave up to build something for myself. I could have called Brittany out, could have stood up, made a scene, asked Emily what was said, and ripped the mask off right there in the middle of the dessert table. But that would have made me the villain, the dramatic, arrogant cousin who couldn't take a joke. I knew how these people operated. They thrived on gossip, on twisting stories into narratives that always painted them as the victim. So I stayed quiet. For now. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be undeniable. And I had a plan. You ever walk into a room and realize everyone's smiling just a bit too hard? Like their eyes don't match their mouths, and there's this undercurrent, this tension that hums just beneath the surface. That's what the banquet felt like after I raised my glass. I thought maybe it was just Brittany, one cousin talking out of pocket. But the more I sat there, the more it became clear it wasn't just her. It was the whole ecosystem of entitlement I'd been quietly tolerating for years. And tonight, it decided to put on a full show. After the slideshow began, they dimmed the lights, and someone passed around champagne for the toast. Emily hadn't said much since she got back to the table. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She kept brushing her hair behind her ear like she was trying to focus on anything but the room. I wanted to ask again. I almost did. But before I could, the lights dimmed and the projector screen flickered on. The first slide was harmless enough. Baby photos of Mason in a bubble bath. Him covered in spaghetti. Cue the os and nostalgic chuckles. My mom had clearly put a lot of effort into this. Some of the photos were animated with transitions, and the background music was one of those emotional piano covers that played just softly enough to make people tear up. I'll admit, for a moment, I felt proud. Mason had made it. He'd stuck through all the nights he wanted to quit. He earned this. But then came the photos from the family section of the slideshow. That's when the ache started. Slide after slide showed Mason with various cousins, aunts, and uncles, everyone but me. There was Brittany laughing with him at some birthday. My other cousin Kyle giving him a piggyback ride. Even my Uncle John fishing with him on a dock I didn't even know they'd visited. At first I thought it was just coincidence. Maybe the photos my mom had were limited. But the more I watched, the more obvious it became. I wasn't in a single frame. Not one. Not even the group shots from Thanksgiving or Christmas. I knew I'd been there, just the year before I'd flown in from San Diego specifically for that dinner. Sat next to Mason. Brought him a pair of noise-canceling headphones he'd wanted for studying. But none of that made the cut. Apparently, I didn't fit the narrative. I felt Emily glance at me. I didn't look back. I just kept my face neutral, my glass in my hand. If I had any doubt before that I was being sidelined in my own family, this erased it. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd edited me out. The slideshow ended with a photo of Mason holding up his acceptance letter to grad school, followed by gold text on the screen. "We're so proud of you, Mason. You earned this. Love, your whole family." Your whole family. What a joke. The lights came up. Everyone clapped. Toasts were made. Brittany got up first and delivered a speech that started out sweet and quickly devolved into a rambling mess about how proud she was to have watched Mason grow up, even when some people were too busy living their fancy lives to show up. She didn't look at me when she said it, but she didn't have to. The entire table glanced in my direction. I just smiled and sipped my drink. Then came Aunt Denise. She started off with a joke about how Mason wasn't born with a silver spoon like some people in this room, and that made people laugh, harder than they should have. My uncle added aloud, "Tell it like it is," and someone even clinked their glass like she'd just delivered the line of the night. It was all subtle, just subtle enough to be deniable, but I could feel it. The shifting temperature, the smirks, the careful phrasing. They were letting me know I didn't belong. And the real kicker? Emily laughed. Just once. Just a small chuckle at the end of Aunt Denise's joke. She caught herself immediately, looked down at her lap, but I saw it, felt it, and something in my chest clenched. Later, when we were getting dessert, I quietly leaned over and asked her, "What did Brittany say to you earlier?" She hesitated. Then, without looking at me, she murmured, "Nothing, just family stuff." "Emily." She sighed. She said, she trailed off. She said you don't really care about anyone here. That you just show up to flex, and that everyone knows you use your money to feel important. She said, I should enjoy it while it lasts. I blinked. Enjoy what? You, she said quietly. Being with someone like you. The words hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to be angry, to yell, to storm across the room and confront Brittany in front of everyone. But all I could do was nod. My hands were steady, but inside, I was vibrating. Not just from what was said, but from the fact that Emily hadn't told me until I asked. That she'd been sitting on it, processing it, maybe even believing it. The banquet ended shortly after. I helped my mom clean up, said my congratulations to Mason, posed for a photo with him at the front of the room. It was the only time all night someone asked me to be in a picture, and it wasn't even for the slideshow, it was for Mason's Instagram. As we were leaving, I heard Kyle, another cousin, say to someone, Bet Landon writes it all off as charity work. Laughter followed. I didn't turn around. When we got into the car, Emily was quiet. She stared out the window, biting her lip. After a while, she said, Can I ask you something? Of course. Is it true? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Is what true? What Brittany said. That they only see you as the wallet. I glanced at her. She wasn't being cruel. She genuinely wanted to understand. Yes, I said. It's true. And you still came tonight? I didn't come for them, I said. I came for Mason. I thought he deserved that much. Emily nodded slowly. But they don't deserve you. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because even she had hesitated. Even she had wondered. And for the first time in our relationship, I didn't feel safe beside her. The next week, everything unraveled faster than I could have imagined. Mason called me out of the blue. Sounded excited. Dude, you didn't tell me you were helping with the slideshow, he said. I blinked. I didn't. Oh, huh. Brittany said you did. She said you were the one who told Mom to leave out the pictures of you, so you wouldn't overshadow the rest of us. That it was some modest gesture or something. My jaw clenched. She said what? He laughed. I mean, I didn't believe her. It sounded weird. But Mom seemed to think it was sweet. I didn't respond. Landon, I gotta go. I hung up. And that's when I realized Brittany wasn't just trying to undermine me. She was rewriting the narrative, framing me as the arrogant outsider and the fake humble martyr. And no one was stopping her. Emily and I didn't talk much that week. I asked if she wanted to get dinner. She said she was busy. When I pressed, she said, I just need time to think. I already knew what that meant. So I waited. And while I waited, I started putting pieces together. The comments, the whispers, the way certain relatives always seemed to know things about my life I hadn't told them. Brittany, she was the common thread. And it wasn't just gossip. It was manipulation. I dug deeper, checked social media, found out she'd been messaging Emily weeks before the banquet. Friendly at first, then increasingly passive-aggressive. Must be nice dating someone so successful. Bet Landon's always got everything covered. Some girls have all the luck, right? and then one that made my stomach turn. Just don't let him treat you like one of his charity projects. It all clicked. The photos left out of the slideshow. The speeches. The way my family looked at me like I was both a savior and a villain. The quiet campaign to make me feel like an outsider in the one place I should have felt safe. And I realized I'd been too quiet, too patient, too forgiving. They thought I wouldn't do anything, that I'd just keep showing up, smiling, writing checks, and pretending it didn't hurt. They were wrong, because I had one card left to play, and I was going to play it loud. Rock bottom doesn't always look like a screaming match or a dramatic breakdown. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a long, slow exhale in the middle of a parking lot, alone, while the last person you trusted says they just need space. It was the following Friday. Emily and I were supposed to meet for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a little Italian place she liked. She showed up 10 minutes late, didn't hug me when she sat down, and avoided eye contact the entire time. I knew before the drinks even arrived. It was like sitting across from someone who was already halfway out the door, and the more she hesitated, the more I braced myself. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, halfway through her salad. "Yeah," I replied. "Me too." She twisted her napkin in her lap. "It's not that I don't care about you. I do. You're a good man, Landon. Better than most. But," I said, already knowing what came next. "But, I don't know where I fit in your world." Her voice cracked. "It feels like you've built this whole life, and I'm just visiting it. Like I'm a guest. I feel like your girlfriend on paper, but I never know what you're actually feeling. And after the banquet, She trailed off. She didn't have to finish. I nodded slowly. I wanted to tell her I understood. That she wasn't wrong. That I had been keeping parts of myself walled off, not just from her, but from everyone. Because when you grow up being treated like a transaction, you learn not to show too much. Not to reveal weakness. Not to give anyone a chance to use it against you. But instead, I just said, "Okay." She blinked. "That's it." "Yeah, that's it." The silence that followed was heavier than anything she could have said. She reached across the table, touched my hand, and for a moment, I thought maybe she'd change her mind. But then she stood up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. I sat there for another hour. Didn't touch my food. Didn't even move. Just watched the couple next to me share dessert and talk about their weekend plans like nothing in the world was wrong. Like people didn't just quietly break each other's hearts in restaurants all the time. That was rock bottom. Not the loneliness, not the betrayal, but the numbness. The realization that I had poured so much of myself into a life that looked good from the outside, but was hollow on the inside. Friends who weren't really friends. Family who only called when rent was due. A girlfriend who'd been swayed by the whisper of someone who hated me just enough to ruin what I'd built. I went home that night and didn't sleep. Just sat on my balcony, staring at the skyline, wondering how it all fell apart so fast. But somewhere in that silence, a new kind of clarity started to form. I had lost people, but I hadn't lost myself. Not yet. And I'd be damned if I let them take that too. So I started rebuilding. Quietly. Carefully. I deleted every social media account I hadn't already abandoned. Changed my number. Stopped replying to texts unless they came from someone who had earned access to me. For weeks, my phone was almost completely silent. And you know what? I didn't miss the noise. I poured myself into work. Not out of spite. Not to prove anything. But because it was something I could control. Something that didn't lie. The hours I put in showed up in the code. In the product. In the results. I picked up a few new clients. Finally launched the AI tool I'd been sitting on for 6 months. And within 3 weeks, I'd signed 2 mid-sized companies on retainer. The money wasn't the victory. It was the validation. A reminder that I wasn't just useful because I could pay someone's car note. I was valuable because I was damn good at what I did. I also started going to the gym again. Not obsessively. Just enough to feel like I had control over my body again. I threw myself into clean eating, long walks, reading books I hadn't touched in years. I made playlists, cleaned my apartment, rearranged my furniture. It sounds small, but after months of being on autopilot, those changes felt like flipping the lights back on. I saw a therapist. Just once at first, then weekly. Her name was Ruth, and she was the first person in years who didn't seem impressed or intimidated by anything I said. She didn't lean forward when I mentioned how much I made. Didn't blink when I admitted how isolated I felt. She just listened, asked questions, Helped me make sense of why I'd spent so long trying to earn the approval of people who had never really accepted me in the first place. You think giving is how you buy safety, she said one day. I frowned. What do you mean? You give them what they want, money, time, silence, because you're hoping it'll make them love you. Or at least, stop resenting you. But what happens when giving stops working? I looked down at my hands. They take more. And what do you do? I hesitated. I smile. I give anyway. She nodded. Then maybe it's time to stop smiling. I didn't say anything, but I carried those words with me. Around the same time, I bumped into Mason again, completely by accident. I was grabbing coffee on a Saturday morning, and he walked into the same shop, earbuds in, looking exhausted but happy. Landon, he said, surprised. I smiled. Hey, graduate. He grinned. Man, it's good to see you. We sat and talked for half an hour. No drama, no tension, just two brothers catching up. He told me about his new internship, how hard grad school was already, and how he was learning to cook for himself without burning the apartment down. Eventually, he said, I wish you'd stayed longer at the banquet. Things got weird after you left. Weird how? Brittany got drunk. Started telling people you were probably back at your gold-plated condo, counting your Bitcoin or something. He shook his head. It was messed up. I told her to shut up. Aunt Denise said I was being disrespectful. I chuckled dryly. Sounds about right. Mason leaned in. You know I never saw you that way, right? I mean, I always looked up to you. You were the only one who didn't treat me like I was a screw-up. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thanks, man. That means more than you know. We exchanged numbers. Real ones this time. Not the family group chat. And for the first time in a while, I felt like maybe I hadn't lost everything. But the real turning point came a week later. I was on a video call with one of my newer clients, a startup founder named Raj. We were finalizing the backend for their product launch when he paused and said, Hey, random question. Shoot, do you do speaking gigs? I blinked. Not really. What? We're hosting a tech panel next month. Investors, founders, devs. I think you'd be a killer addition. I hesitated. I'm not really the public type. He laughed. You're articulate, smart, and you don't BS. That's rare. Think about it. I told him I would. And I did. For 2 days, I stared at the invitation he sent me. Then I replied yes. That panel changed everything. I showed up in a blazer and jeans, nervous as hell, but the second I started talking, it clicked. People listened. Not because I was rich, not because they wanted something, but because I had something to say. Something real. Afterward, 3 founders approached me for advice. One asked me to mentor her team. Another offered to collaborate on a project. I walked out of that room feeling seen, really seen, for the first time in years. I wish I could say that fixed everything, that I never felt that ache again. But healing isn't linear. Some days I missed Emily so much it physically hurt. Some nights I caught myself staring at old photos, wondering if I could have done something differently. But every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Not the family wallet, not the quiet cousin, just me, Landon. And as I stood there brushing my teeth one night, I finally said the words out loud. I'm done playing small. It wasn't a declaration. It was a promise. To myself, to the kid I used to be, to the man I was becoming, and to every single person who had mistaken my kindness for weakness. Because the next time I showed up to a family event, I wasn't coming to smile and nod. I was coming to change the narrative. Revenge, when done right, doesn't come wrapped in fury or fire. It comes in silence, in planning, in patience. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't rushing to fix or explain or smooth things over. I was watching, waiting, taking notes, and setting the board. A few weeks after the tech panel, I got a call from my mom. Nothing unusual, just her checking in, making small talk, pretending like the banquet hadn't been a slow, public erasure of everything I'd ever meant to that family. I let her talk, listened carefully, threw in the right number of ahas and sounds great, until she got to the real reason for the call. So, she said lightly, your father and I were thinking of throwing Mason a smaller family-only celebration. Just at the house. Nothing fancy. He didn't really get to say thank you to everyone properly after the banquet. I paused. You mean the banquet where I was conveniently left out of all the photos? She sighed, a little too dramatically. Landon, please. Don't start with that again. I haven't even started yet. She changed the subject, quick as a snap. Anyway, it's just a dinner. Saturday night. I know you're busy, but we'd love to have you. I'll be there. She sounded surprised. Really? Wouldn't miss it. I hung up, set the phone down, and smiled to myself. They thought I was done, that I'd disappeared, that their little jabs and whispers had pushed me far enough that I wouldn't bother coming back. They thought I was predictable, that I'd stay quiet forever. They were wrong. But I wasn't going to show up angry. I was going to show up ready. Over the next few days, I made some calls. Not to lawyers or hitmen or anything that dramatic. I'm not that kind of guy. But I did reach out to a few friends in the tech and finance world. One of them, Jonah, owed me a favor from a project I helped him untangle last year. He's a digital forensics analyst who used to work for a hedge fund, and I knew he had a particular skill set I needed. Think you can help me pull some social data? I asked over coffee. He leaned back, intrigued. You mean like stalking an ex? More like tracing a whisper campaign. His eyes lit up. Family drama? I nodded. Oh, I'm in. It didn't take long. Brittany wasn't exactly subtle online. Her public Instagram was curated and performative, but her burner account, disguised as a lifestyle inspiration page, was sloppier. Jonah traced the IP address from some of the comments she'd left under other family members' posts, and surprise, it matched her home network. Turns out, she'd been running her mouth about me for months, sharing screenshots of texts I'd sent, exaggerating interactions, mocking my job, and, most damning, planting rumors that I had a savior complex and was manipulative with money. She called me the family wallet in nearly every post. Hashtagged it. I forwarded everything to a private Google Drive folder, labeled it receipts, and sat back. Then I got to work on the real play. You see, Mason had a mountain of student debt, nearly $80,000 in loans. He didn't talk about it much, but I knew. I knew because I'd co-signed one of his federal loans back when he was too young to know what he was signing. I'd watched him struggle with it, watched him skip holidays and side gigs to keep up with payments. So I made a call to my financial advisor. Bought out every loan I could in Mason's name, quietly, using a shell LLC I'd set up years ago for real estate. I made sure it wouldn't reflect my name, just the business. Just a vague-sounding corporation. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I messaged Brittany. Hey, been a while. You free to talk before Saturday's dinner? Just us. No drama. She replied within 5 minutes. Sure. Coffee. We met at a little cafe halfway between our places. She showed up in full influencer mode. Large sunglasses, high-waisted jeans, an expensive handbag that I'm 90% sure was a knockoff. She greeted me like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't tried to dismantle my relationship, humiliate me in front of family, and paint me as a manipulative puppet master behind my back. So, she said, sipping her caramel oat milk latte. This is a surprise. I wanted to talk, I said plainly. Clear the air. Her eyebrows arched. About what? About what you said to Emily at the banquet. She froze, just for a second. I don't know what you mean. Brittany. She leaned back. Okay, fine. I might have said a few things. But that's what families do. We tease. You're kind of intense sometimes. You told her I was using her. That I saw her as a project. That I was the family wallet and she should take what she could. Her smile faltered. I'm not mad, I said. Honestly, I'm just impressed. She blinked. Impressed. You've really committed to this narrative. The whispering. The little digs. The curated image of me as some robotic bank account with no emotions. She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. Don't worry, I said, smiling. I'm not here to fight. Then what are you here for? I leaned in. To thank you. That threw her off. She laughed awkwardly. For what? For reminding me that being quiet isn't the same as being weak. I stood, finished my coffee, and left her sitting there, confused. Because that was the point. Let her wonder. Let her stew. Let her think something was coming, but not know what. That Saturday, I arrived at my parents' house 15 minutes early. Not to help set up, but to plant the final piece of the puzzle. I pulled Mason aside before anyone else arrived. Hey, I said, handing him a sealed envelope. Don't open this until the end of the night. Trust me. He looked confused. What is it? A graduation gift. One I've been working on for a while. He smiled. You didn't have to. I wanted to, I said firmly. You've earned it. As the rest of the family trickled in, I kept my head low. Played the role. Polite, calm, smiling. Brittany arrived late, of course, wearing a blazer like she was the guest of honor. She made a beeline for the kitchen and offered to help with hors d'oeuvres, but I noticed how she kept watching me from across the room, trying to decode what I was planning. Dinner was loud and crowded. The table was full. Laughter, wine, clinking glasses. I waited. Let them talk. Let the conversation wander. Eventually, my mom stood and tapped her glass. Before we finished dessert, she said, beaming, I just want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate Mason again. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Everyone clapped. Then I stood. Actually, I said, raising my voice just slightly, I have something I'd like to share too. The room fell quiet. I turned to Mason. You still have that envelope? He nodded, already pulling it from his jacket. Go ahead. Read it. He opened it slowly. Read the letter inside. Then read it again. His eyes widened. He looked up, stunned. You what? The room was silent. I bought out your student loans, I said casually. All of them. Gasps. My mother put a hand to her mouth. My dad blinked like he hadn't heard me correctly. Brittany's face paled. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, I continued. But then I thought, why not? If I'm going to be treated like the family wallet, I may as well do something useful with it. A beat of silence. Then Mason stood and hugged me. Hard. Said something like, Dude, are you serious? But I barely heard it. Because I was looking directly at Brittany. And she looked like she'd just watched her entire house of cards collapse. I wasn't done. Not yet. But I smiled, raised my glass, and said, Funny what a walking wallet can do, huh? And in that moment, I wasn't quiet anymore. The silence after my toast wasn't just awkward, it was seismic. That kind of thick, unmoving hush you only hear when a whole room realizes, in unison, that someone's just flipped the entire table. Mason was still holding the letter, his hands shaking slightly. You could see it written across his face, disbelief, gratitude, confusion. My parents were stunned too, but in a different way. My dad kept glancing between me and Brittany like he was putting two and two together, and my mom's mouth opened slightly, like she was about to say something, then shut again. She didn't know which side of this she was supposed to be on yet. But Brittany looked like a ghost. For a second, she tried to smile, like this was all just another cute surprise. Wow, she said, voice just a touch too high-pitched. That's so generous of you, Landon. I gave her nothing. No eye contact. Just a casual sip of wine and a slow blink. Let her sweat. She tried again. Really thoughtful, especially after, everything. This time, I turned to her. After what, Britt? She faltered. Oh, I didn't mean. I just meant after the whole, Banquet misunderstanding. Ah, the misunderstanding, I said softly. Right. The one where you told my girlfriend to use me for money and leave before I got boring. That one. The entire room snapped their heads toward her. What? My mom whispered. Brittany's face turned scarlet. I didn't. That's not what I said. Oh no, I said, reaching calmly into my blazer. You said, and I quote, he's just the family's walking wallet. Take what you can. I pulled out a printed screenshot and dropped it on the table. Same phrasing you used on your little burner Instagram account too, by the way. Now she looked like she couldn't breathe. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, I continued. For years, I let the jokes slide. I let the gossip slide. I even stayed quiet when you tried to tank my relationship. But you got greedy. You didn't just want to mock me. You wanted to define me. So you did. For the whole family. Over and over. I leaned forward slightly. And that's when you made a mistake. You forgot who I am. Brittany's voice was cracking now. You hacked me or something? I actually laughed. No, I don't need to break the law to get the truth. You left a trail long enough to wrap around this house. I just followed it. My uncle, Brittany's dad, tried to jump in. Hey, come on, Landon. She was just venting, maybe got carried away. No, I said, sharper now. She was building a narrative. And you helped her. All of you. With the snide comments, the jokes, the backhanded compliments. You've all been part of this little ecosystem of entitlement for years, and I let it slide because I thought eventually you'd grow out of it. I looked around the room, meeting each of their eyes one by one. You didn't. I stood up. So here's how this is going to go. You could hear a pin drop. I'm done pretending I don't hear the whispers. Done showing up to be laughed at behind my back. Done being the walking wallet. From now on, I'm choosing who gets access to me. And that access is revoked, for most of you. Gasps. Murmurs. You can keep playing your games, I added, but I won't be a character in them anymore. I'm not funding holidays. I'm not co-signing loans. I'm not flying across the country for people who think respect is optional. I'm reclaiming the narrative. Starting now. Brittany pushed up from her chair, angry now, clinging to the last scraps of control. You think you're so special because you've got money? That makes you a good person? I stared her down. No, but choosing not to use it as leverage? That's what made me a good person. And you mistook that for weakness. That's when Mason stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately. He turned to Brittany and said, I knew you had issues, but I didn't know you were this cruel. Her mouth dropped. You're siding with him? He's my brother, Mason said. The one person who's never treated me like a burden. And you almost convinced me he was the problem. Then he looked at me. Thank you, Landon. Not just for the money. For everything. That moment right there, that was the real payoff. Not the stunned silence. Not the looks of guilt or horror, but the quiet, unwavering loyalty in Mason's voice. The moment someone finally, publicly, saw me for who I really was. And then came the final act. As people murmured and shifted awkwardly in their seats, I cleared my throat one last time. Oh, and one more thing. About that burner account. Brittany looked up, panicked. I smiled faintly. I submitted a digital harassment report to the platform. With evidence. The screenshots. The IP logs. The public defamation. And just for fun, I copied it to your latest sponsor. She went pale. I nodded. Yeah. Turns out wellness influencers don't do well when they're caught cyberbullying their own family. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already did. And with that, I turned to Mason, clapped a hand on his shoulder, and said, Enjoy being debt-free, little brother. Then I walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because as far as I was concerned, that part of my life, the part where I let other people define my worth, was over. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Brittany's burner account was removed. Her brand deals dried up. She posted a tearful apology video that barely cracked 1,000 views and was swiftly ratioed by people quoting my toast. Funny what a walking wallet can do, huh? Became a meme in our extended family group chat. My dad left it quietly 2 days later. Aunt Denise tried to reach out, of course. So did a few other relatives, acting like they hadn't clapped along to every one of Brittany's jabs over the years. I let the messages sit unread. They weren't apologies, they were damage control. Emily called too. She'd seen the fallout online. Said she was sorry. Said she missed me. I thanked her. Told her I wished her well. And hung up. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Revenge wasn't fire and fury. It was truth. It was silence. It was walking away without flinching. And knowing you'll never, ever be mistaken for a doormat again. Funny what a walking wallet can do, huh?